with the wireless LAN and the broadcast of this session and what have you. So please switch off your mobile phones. My name is Karel. I'm the Secretary General of TERENA, and it's my pleasure to share this session. And I must start with a number of apologies. This session has been struck by a bit of bad luck, so we have to make some changes. My first apology is that I'm not Rob Lokzeil, who was supposed to share this session, but he is not here, so I have taken over the sharing this session in Rob's place. Also, as you've seen in the program, Rob was scheduled as the first speaker to speak about ICANN, so obviously that also cannot happen. And at the very last moment, Stefano Trumpy has kindly stepped in to do a presentation about ICANN, as well as the presentation that was already scheduled for him. And then the final piece of bad luck was that Harald Alvestrand, our final speaker, was on a plane that was scheduled to land at 3 o'clock, but that has a 5-hour delay, and since you probably don't want to wait until 8:30 for his talk, we simply have to do without that. So the schedule has been rearranged. We start with Stefano Trumpy speaking about ICANN and Internet governance. Then Cees de Laat will speak about the IRTF. And then we have Stefano again on the Internet Society. And of course there's plenty of room for questions in between. Let me first explain why we have this session. Actually, this is a suggestion that came up in the talk between TERENA and Reneter, our French member. Danny van Drom and Sabine Joan of Reneter pointed out that our research networking world, of course, is operating in a much wider environment, the environment of the Internet standards bodies, and the Internet governance environment. And of course many of you are involved in that in some way, but some of you are not, and as far as you're involved, you're probably only involved in part of it. So they made the suggestion that a TERENA conference would be a useful point once a year to give a sort of update on what is happening in bodies like ICANN and the IRTF and the IETF and the Internet Society for those of you who do not follow the developments in those bodies on a day-to-day basis. So if you're involved in these bodies, you probably will hear a lot of what you already know, but for those of you who are not involved, this is a good opportunity to catch up on what these bodies are and what has been happening in these bodies in the last year. So without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker, Stefano Trumpy. You already saw him in the opening session as the program committee of this conference. He has many other functions, but the hat he is wearing for his first presentation is that he is very much involved in ICANN, Internet governance body. For example, because he is involved in the running of the Italian top-level domain .it, and also because he represents the Italian government in what is called the Governmental Advisory Council of ICANN. So from different perspectives, he knows a lot about that organization, and he's going to tell us about it now. Stefano.
Good evening again, and as Karel said, I have an involvement in ICANN business since the beginning, the birth of this organization. ICANN was started in '98, and so is now almost at the end of his third year of life. Rob Lokzeil, which was supposed to give this presentation, is one of the directors, or the members of the board of directors of ICANN, and so let me talk showing this, which is the organizational chart of ICANN. First of all, when ICANN was started, the main scope was to organize in an international organization the functions that were performed by IANA. IANA was a function which until 1998 was financed by the American government, the Department of Commerce in particular. And after the publication of the White Book by Clinton and Gore, there was a decision of the American government to render the governance of the Internet an affair for the private sector and handled by the global community in the world. So this organization was then started with a board of directors having 18 members plus one. The one is the president and chief executive officer. Here you find the name of Mike Roberts, which recently has been replaced by Lynn Stewart is the new president. And Rob Bloxdale is one of the 10 members of the board of directors. There are some lines missing. It is important, looking from left side in the screen, the so-called at-large membership, which is the organization where all the internet users or any person interested into the ICANN business apply to become a member. And if you remember, if someone of you put attention on this, about 1 year ago, we had elections for the directors elected by this at-large membership. And the at-large membership elects 9 of the 18 directors. Actually, last year, the at-large membership elected only 5 of the 9, and in particular, 1 for each region of the world. And ICANN has divided the world into 5 regions, which are not exactly coincident with the continents in the world, because we have Latin America, Africa, and North America, which are coinciding roughly with the continents. And then we have Europe, and then we have the so-called Pacific Rim, Asia-Pacific region, and with not very clear boundary where Europe is ending and where Asia is starting. And talking with the TERENA audience, you know that TERENA is looking not only to the geographical Europe, but also to the countries that want to be recognize themselves, let's say, close to the European policy and so on. Then we have the red, blue and green columns, which represent the organizations that are performing the functions that were performed previously by IANA. The first one, and I would say the most important, is the domain name supporting organization. Let me say most important is simply because if you make the balance of the discussions within ICANN, you realize that perhaps 60 or even 70% of the time of the discussions is going in the discussions concerning the names. Of course, for the internet stability, maybe the address, IP address allocation is at least as much as important as the names. And of course, we could say that the protocol supporting organization is even more important because the internet is based on protocols, as we learned this morning in the introductory session. But the IANA function concerning the protocol supporting the protocols is more related to the publication of the protocols rather than the formation of the protocols, which is conducted by IETF mainly and also by other organizations. So each one of those three areas have been divided into these groups that we call constituencies. Constituencies means a group of interest, means the organized group that are dealing with such problems. So if we are looking at the names, we have the business, which is internet users which are commercial as a nature. And then we have the non-commercial users, and incidentally, TERENA is participating into this constituency of non-commercial users. Then we have the CCTLD, which stands for Country Code Top-Level Domains Registries, and so all the countries in the world have a country code, and more than that, because there are a number of territories which are not really countries that got a country code top-level domain. And let's say, several TERENA members are also running their country code in their country. I'm one example. In Italy, the country code is run by the CNR, which is part of our national network. In Turkey, the country code is run by a university in Turkey. And there are a number of other countries directly involved in assigning the names. And also in this room we have the last approved country code by ICANN, which is Palestine, and Marwan is on the first line here. And this country code was assigned 1 year ago, and I could say that it is not yet going and running adequately, but we are trying to work in order that to happen. Then we have the GTLDs, which stands for General Top-Level Domains, and these are those domains which are not tied to a geographical reason like the old .com, .net and .org. And then we have the new ones which have been recently approved by ICANN, and we expect that they become operational in the second half of this year. Then we have another constituency, which is the ISPs, the industry sector, supplying the services for the internet. And then we have the registrars, which are those organizations registering the names in the general top-level domains. And last point, but not least, let me say, is the kind of people referring to the intellectual property. And this is connected to the fact that assigning names inside the internet has today a commercial value, and there is a lot of protection for trademarks or for any names which have a commercial value and which activate, in many cases, disputes, legal disputes, not only in the national scale, but often in the international scale. So this is these 7 constituencies should represent the organized groups that have something to say concerning the allocation of names in the internet. The second column is referring to the address supporting organization, and we are proud to say that RIPE NCC has been the first regional, let's say, continental organization that was established to assign the IP numbers not on a national base but on a coordinated regional base. And the other organizations are in North America, and APNIC in the Asia-Pacific region was built up after RIPE NCC, following the model of RIPE NCC. And similar organizations are being organized in Africa and in Latin America. In the last column, we have the activities on the standard, which, as I said, mainly conducted by IETF inside the ISOC umbrella. And then recently there was an agreement with also other important standard organizations like the W3C, the ITU, and ETSI, in order them to participate into the publication of the standards inside the ISOC, the ICANN. Last word I would like to add is in the committees, which are not directly tied to the organizational chart, because these committees are advisory committees, and not necessarily the ICANN management have to take care of what they say. And one is referring to the root server, and another one to the membership, another one to the budget, and the last one I will spend some word about is the Governmental Advisory Committee, which is made up of representatives of the governments which are interested in the activity of ICANN. And the scope of this committee is to try to give advice in order to avoid that ICANN takes decisions that will go against national law or treaties or whatever it is. And from a technician like I am, I have to say that it is a great effort to try to explain to the governments that the internet governance is something that should be kept away from too much direct influence of the government. What I want to tell right now is just to make a short overview of the problems that we are dealing about in this period of time. So first of all, ICANN has been established with an agreement with the Department of Commerce of the U.S. government. And the idea is that as soon as ICANN will demonstrate to be able to be completely autonomous and accomplish the main task that were established at the beginning, then the U.S. government will step out. And really, the management of the Internet will become something in the global scene. We are now in an extension of this first 2 years agreement, and at the end of this September, I think that this agreement will be extended for another year, just waiting for accomplishing all the tasks that ICANN was supposed to accomplish. Then, about the new general top-level domains, very soon .biz for business and info will be activated, while the other 5, which are Aero for aerospace, Coop for cooperatives, names and museum, and .pro for professional, will be activated in the second half of this year. Of course, the activation of new general top-level domains will enter in a way in competition, let's say, with the country code top-level domain, and all the area of the DNS is a moving area, of course. The other point of great, let's say, political importance is this of the internationalized domain names. So now domain names are made of letters and numbers and underscore and nothing more. So no letter with accent or no different alphabets like the Greek or the Russian or the Arabic alphabets. And there is a strong pressure, especially by the Asian people, Chinese, Japanese, and all this area, to insert the possibility of registering domain names written in their national characters. And so IETF is working in this period to establish standards that will be able to assure the uniqueness of the addressing scheme and the translation from national characters to a common understood scheme. And this is a very important point, and a number of companies already started with test beds and started to sell domain names in national characters, but at risk that in this way different solutions will not be interoperable. And so we have to take special care about this problem. Then there is a revised agreement with VeriSign for .com, .net, .org, and VeriSign, as you know, acquired the network solution which was running until 1 year ago, the general top-level domains, and the political pressure is to lessen the monopoly that VeriSign has on general top-level domains. At present, there is a study going on the future of the at-large membership. So, since there is the fear that 9 directors elected by at-large membership maybe too much or not so well controlled for assuring good management of the organization. And there is a study panel which is headed by a former Prime Minister of Sweden, Carl Bildt, and so a very high political level, in order to suggest to the ICANN Board of Directors how to restructure this organization in order to assure the better management of it. And of course, the decision-making and the progress of ICANN, especially after the end of the American government involvement, is something very crucial and very critical. So we have to assure in this way the integrity of the Internet for the future. Another point which is quite important for us in this period, for those also TERENA members which are running their country code TLD, is the settlement of contracts with ICANN. And this implies a problem of legitimation of this country code TLD. Because I say that because in the past, you remember maybe John Postel, which was one of the fathers of the Internet, who was dealing with the IANA function, and he just assigned the management of the country code TLD to groups and organizations that gave to him the impression that they were able to run the job properly, and that in that country there was a sufficient agreement among the Internet community that this organization was going to run the country code. But now, if we have to enter into a formal contract, and in a situation where the national governments are much more careful about what's happening with the Internet, then there is a need of much more formality, and then this establishment of contracts is something that it takes quite a long discussion. Right.
What are you going to do then with, for example, a domain like .tv? Which was sold to
Yeah, you made, okay, you choose a very good example, of course. Because .tv is the country code assigned to the territory of Tuvalu. Tuvalu is a group of islands in the oceanic region. I don't remember very well where it is. And there is a company in California that made an agreement with the people in Tuvalu, and they are selling .tv like television, and they are promoting this like a general top-level domain. So there are a number of country codes like that, like .nu, .cc, and especially in the Pacific and oceanic region. And all these country codes were, in the opinion of someone, given by an error by IANA at that time. But the rule was that any country being in a certain UN country code table, the 3166, which was a table born for assigning postal codes for mail, and so a number of territories which were not integral part of a country, of a nation, were assigned a country code only because it had no meaning to send a piece of mail in Paris if this piece of mail then had to go to Guadeloupe, for example. And so Guadeloupe had a two-letter country code which has been transmitted to the Internet. And then many businessmen from especially UK, Australia, New Zealand, US, having a number of these territories, started doing this as a business without caring a lot of the local internet community. And this was, if you want, something against the spirit of the country code. If you want to add something, go ahead. Okay. Then the last point I noted here is the problem of the root servers. At present, there is one authoritative root server which is run by VeriSign, former network solution. And then there are another 12 root servers spread out in the world. Actually, not very spread, because if I recall, 10 of them are in United States, a couple in Europe, and one in Japan. So, and the other 12 are not a backup, let's say. So the point for ICANN right now is to retrieve the management of the authoritative root server inside the ICANN, and then to perhaps redistribute the backup, the other root servers in other regions of the world. And also there is a pressure from RIPE to have another one in Europe. Okay, this one is the last point. Something I already said, but just to mention where the technical questions that I've been talking about become of interest for the governments. First of all, of course, is the role of the governments in the internet governance, and is not by chance that I wrote governments with capital letter and governance with small letter. Because, as I said, it is important that the self-regulation of the internet is winning, let's say, and that the governments do some regulation in a very light way, possibly very, very light. Then assure the geographical diversity in ICANN, which is very important because, for example, Africa is not so much present, but in the last elections, one delegate from Africa was elected into the board of ICANN. And then, of course, the governments want to have a say in the problem regarding the delegation and management of the country code TLD, with perhaps the exception of some of the of these territories in the Pacific. And just to mention, in one of these islands, I know that in the board of which run the registry, there is the hereditary prince, the son of the king, which is part of the board, and he assures that the management is in the interest of the local population. And then I already mentioned the internationalized domain names, and of course the governments are interested in the protection of privacy, and so the publication of the data concerning all the domain name holders, and also the publication of the protection of the intellectual property. Okay, I think this is a good overview, I hope.
Thank you. We are running a little bit late, so I propose that we save any questions to the end of the entire session and see how much time we got left then. So we go straight away to the next speaker, who is Cees Laat from Utrecht University in the Netherlands. Cees is involved in TERENA in very many ways, active in our groups. On the table near the TERENA stand here outside you will find a report that he and some of his colleagues wrote for TERENA last year, but that's not what he's going to talk about now. He's also very active in some of the subgroups of the IRTF, and he's going to explain to us now what IRTF is and what IRTF has been doing lately. Cees Laat.
I tend to like to walk a little bit, but okay. Seems that I'm fixed to this place. So thanks for the nice introduction. It is still correct. I'm still from the University of Utrecht, but you might find out that I will change job within a month. So stay tuned. So I am filling in for Erik Huizer, who is actually the chair of the IRTF, but he had to go to another, probably more important or less important, but another conference. Thanks. He had to go to another conference, and so I'm stepping in for him. And I do so as being also a co-chair of the AAA research group, which is now in existence for about 1.5 or 2 years. So I got a little bit familiar of working within the IRTF. So the title of the talk is the IRTF Promoting Research for the Evolution of the Future Internet. So everything what I'm going to present, of course, I know a lot about our own research group. I know something about some of the other research groups, and the others I had really to go through their mailing lists and their web pages to find out what is happening there. But for those of you who do not know anything about IETF or IRTF or are not familiar, I will first give an overview of where in the organizations or organizational where the IRTF is located and what its mission is. So the mission is to promote research of importance to the evolution of the future internet by creating focused, long-term and small research groups. So very focused, long-term and small research groups working on topics related to the internet protocols, applications, architecture and technology. So in these few words you see the main ways of existence of the research groups. They are really focused to a certain problem area, long-lived, so they are not really kept up to their milestones and have to finish a protocol by the next IETF, get into last call before that, and so on. So it gives you a kind of an harbor, a safe harbor, a kind of shelter to do more deep research, which of course me as a university person likes. So what's its organizational position? You all know the ISOC is the worldwide body looking or actually governing or looking into the health of the internet. Everybody can become member of that. You can even become member of that now if you go to that homepage and do an electronic registration, except if you live in the Netherlands, because it is not in the drop-down menu. I don't know why, but I complained already.
Did you look under the T of the Netherlands?
Well, I would have noticed that, but maybe I will once more say this to the local Board of Trustees member. As you can see here, the ISOC actually charters 3 bodies. It charters the IETF or the ISG, if you wish, with its mission to create the protocols. It charters the IAB, the Internet Architecture Board, which should look more to the architecture of the Internet and to the consistency, if you wish, of all the protocols and everything what's happening in there. And it charters also the IRTF, the IRSG, if you wish, to do the research. The IAB is responsible for chartering the individual research groups. So if you want to, if you have a bright idea, or if you think there's a problem spot within the internet somewhere, and you want to create a research group or propose a research group to look into that, you have to send a proposed charter, send it to the chair of the IRTF, and he will send it to the IAB for approval. It is only the IAB which approves in the end the charters of the research groups. So organizational, it is a bit the same like in the IETF, where you have the ISG with area directors looking to the different fields to create the protocols. However, in the IRTF there is an IRSG, I come back to that, but it is not really split up in area directors and which look to groups of research groups. There are not that many research groups, and there are not that kind of typical area directors there. So I come back to that. So I go into that. The IRTF organization, it is chaired by a chair who is also on the IAB. The chair of the IRTF is by function also part of the IAB. And the IRTF is also chair is also appointed by the IAB. Then there are research group chairs. Well, typically, if a group comes up with we want to do research in this or that topic, or the IAB asks a group of people to do research on their behalf in a certain topic, then usually a few persons write a proposed charter and choose among themselves the chairs for that group, usually one or two. So usually it is either a chair or two chairs. Like in my group, we are with two chairs. So, and the IRSG is composed of all the research group chairs. So as being a research group chair, you are immediately also a member of the IRSG, so am I. And the IRTF chair can, together with the IAB, appoint other people to become member of the IRSG. But to my knowledge, there are none others than the current chairs. So, what you have to do as a research group, how you have to work, the guidelines, the procedures to uphold in your group, the things you have to do if you want to organize a meeting, you have to announce it 4 weeks on beforehand. All those details, how to handle RFCs, because an IRTF research group can write RFCs, how that is done and how you do last calls and so on is all written down in RFC 2014. So there you can find really all the details of how to write a charter, how to create such a group and get it into existence, and then how to run it more or less. So what can you do and what can you not do? You can do, it is in fact a long-lived research group, so there are usually not really time constraints, and if we go through the groups later in this talk, we will see that some groups really live long. You can have open or closed memberships. Well, as you all know or not know, the IETF consists of working groups, and in fact you are a member of the IETF as soon as you subscribe to one of the mailing lists, and actually the IETF is not much more than the mailing list. Luckily enough the chair is not here, so well, what I want to say is the thing which binds the IETF are the mailing lists. Well, the same is true for the IRTF. You also have to create, of course, a mailing list, mailing archive and all those things, but in the IETF they need to be open. In the IRTF it is allowed to have a closed research group, which is only by invitation or at the discretion of the chairs, or you can have also completely open membership. So that's up to the group which formed the research group, and probably also it should be in the charter. So if the IAB thinks different, they will probably not approve your charter if you do not make a wise choice. The research group I'm chair of, the AAA research group, is by the way, is completely open. Well, meetings at IETFs. It is written down also in the RFC. I must say that I have mixed experience with that. We compete actually against the normal working groups for slots. If there are more working groups requiring slots than there are in that hotel, as the number of rooms times the number of slots they want to allocate, they are out of luck, because there is a rule that first all the requests of the working groups are approved, and then if there is anything left, it is for the IRTF. So actually about half a year ago I noticed that if you always look to the agenda of the IETF, that Thursday evening is never scheduled any session. So I asked to the secretary of the IETF why that is, and she told me, well, that's usually because the area directors get tired and fed up, and that's actually a resting evening for the area director. So I said, well, why then not make that an IRTF evening, so that you always have at the Thursday evening the IRTF meetings, and then, well, it is of course very relaxing to go to real research, also for those area directors. And so they at least well approved that, or it is at least now on the list of to do. As many of you also know, the IETF always has at its meetings at Wednesday evening a big plenary meeting, and usually or almost always one of the IRTF groups is asked to give a talk of half an hour at the plenary of the IETF. We have a kind of same meeting organization rules as IETF working group, so 1 month's notice, so that everybody can order still somewhat cheap plane tickets. Same note-taking rules, so as chair you have always to find 2 volunteers for making notes and then taking the best of them. We are only allowed to make informational or experimental RFCs. The IRTF groups are not allowed to make standard tracks RFCs. If we would want to come up with a standard, then we really have to move forward with this work into a working group or propose it in a working group, because of course all the members of all those research groups are also members of many working groups, and you have to introduce then the work in the appropriate working group. By the way, informational RFCs, well, that's just information. Experimental RFCs are a little bit stronger in the sense that it is, it gives a reference that this work is expected to become standard tracks in working groups. So experimental RFCs have more a stronger standing. Well, to make RFCs, it is at the discretion of the RG chair. So a chair gets the RFCs from the authors within his research group, or at least the drafts, of course, and has to send them to the RFC editor with a copy to the IRTF chair, and they have to consult with the IAB if it is an appropriate draft, but they are not required to, but they usually do. And experimental RFCs may, not must, but may go to through the IESG. And the last line is that we cannot do standard. So in the last part of this talk, I want a little bit to give you a flavor of what is going on in the IRTF, go through the list of active IRTF research groups. There are also 2 historical IRTF research groups. I mentioned them first because I did not even look into them, but there was one on privacy and security, and there was one on information infrastructure architecture, but I didn't look into that. Actually, if you go to the links pointing to them, then you only find a page which says that it is historical, but not what they did. The active IRTF research groups are about 12 of them, and I will now individually go through them very briefly. The first one I could talk another hour of that, because that's of course my group. It has so many A's in its name that it is always the first one. The Authentication, Authorization, Accounting, Architecture Research Group was actually started about 1.5 years ago, when a group of the AAA working group in the IETF found out, or at least it seemed, that the AAA working group was focused towards doing AAA for network access and mobile IP, and we felt that a lot of applications needing generic AAA were falling outside scope. So for a lot of other AAA applications, we started a research group, because we also felt that it would take much more time still to come to an architecture which would support those applications. So I chair it together with John Volbrecht from Interlink Networks, who was formerly from Merit, and we have an open membership policy, so everybody can become member, go to the come on the mailing list, go to the website, join the meetings. The status is very active. To give you an idea, one subgroup has now created a generic policy language, made a formal language, which we are currently hammering out and will put on the mailing list in a few days, probably before the end of this week. And we are, together with the REP working group in the IETF, started an effort to model and to describe, to make a data model and describe the architecture more or less of the problem of authentication for the different authentication protocols which are out there. Another group, the Building Differentiated Services.
Question.
Where? Okay. I'm not sure. I know that the people looked into that, but they made a kind of very generic language. I know that they looked into the language of the Imperial College. They had some problems with it, but the real details I have to direct you to one of my co-workers. So we can speak about that afterwards. The Building Differentiated Services Group, that is chaired by John Cowcroft and Victor Viruyu. It seemed to me that should be quite an active research group. It looks into how you can deploy differentiated services over multiple networks. So it identifies major issues and investigates solutions for building, deploying and managing predictable, robust intra and inter-domain services based on various architectures and per-hop behaviors. So it is everything real quality of service people would like. So since I'm not member of that group, I went of course to their homepage and to their mailing list, and I must say they have a limited policy, so you can only become a member of the mailing list if they want you. But they have their archive online. I looked into the archive. The last few months, last half year so to say, only contains mails about how to enlarge your thing or how to order pills for that. So it is only spamming which they have on their mailing list, and I didn't see any mail about work. So I guess it is not active, or at least not very active. There is an end-to-end research group chaired by Bob Braden from ISI. It really looks into the problems for end-to-end services where you usually otherwise have network address translators and firewalls and everything, VPNs in between. So it really looks how the end-to-end connectivity has changed as the internet is evolving. As you noticed, also Steve Deering made some remarks about that without really specifying the end-to-end research group. I didn't hear a lot about it, but I started to look on their mailing list. They have an open membership policy, and they have quite an active mailing list. got it from the archive. They have several mails a week which are really on all kinds of topics related to this, so they are apparently very active. Internet Resource Discovery Research Group. The charter is currently revised, if you go to the home page. So the research group was chartered to develop a model for resource description on the internet. Well, tomorrow in the middleware track I will give a talk about the architecture of middleware and the problem of middleware or whatever. And one of the issues, of course, is if you are going to bring components on the internet, how can somebody else find them? If based on a set of criteria. So this should be important, but apparently I looked into it. Nothing is happening. The membership policy is a closed one, so you cannot get into it if they don't want it. And I didn't find any activity. So I don't know if anybody is here from that research group, but I would love to hear what they are doing. Now we get into more active research groups, apart of course from mine. The Interplanetary Internet Research Group. They also gave a talk, quite a nice talk on about 2 or 3 IETFs ago. And they are chartered into looking what you may call extreme internet. So what's an extreme internet or interplanetary internet? You have nowadays a space station around the Earth. We might get moon bases, although I don't believe in my lifetime. But you get deep space probes, and more they are also getting technology which is somehow also connected, has connectivity, let me put it that way, not direct internet connectivity of course, but this research group is really looking into what would happen if we would have on different planets, so actually if we would have different parts of internet which have round trip times in the hours instead of milliseconds. And what if we had parts of the internet on places where the packet loss is 90% instead of 0.09 or whatever. So what if anything in the internet is extreme? And they of course typically take this because it is really an active group. It is hosted and housed mostly by NASA and CNES, the European spacecraft companies. So they really look to what would it mean if you would have parts of the internet which are far apart, and how do you keep them consistent? How do you really do traffic? What would it mean for TCP/IP protocol, which would otherwise most probably give a lot of time out, and these kinds of questions. They are very active. Network Management Research Group, the NMRG, by Jürgen Schonwalder. This is also quite an active group, and it looks into research to explore new technologies for the management of the internet. So they work on solutions for problems that are not yet considered well understood enough for engineering to work with the IETF. So they are mostly in the management of parts of the internet. Another group, the Namespace Research Group, which was supposed to look into the private address space for IP version 4 by Steve Krogner and Steve Bellevin. It was a closed research group. It was on invitation only, and the status, as far as I could see on their mailing list, they did not have mail for the last 2 years, so it is quite sleepy. The Reliable Multicast Group, it is, well, that's pretty obvious. They look into how you can do multicast with some reliability, that you know for sure that what you are streaming out is really coming to the clients. It is an open, they have an open policy, so everybody can become a member. The status is they have lots of announcements on their mailing lists, but really on the topic I do not see much much mails in their repository, so I don't know where they are really doing the work. The routing research group. This is an extremely important group. It is also very active currently. They gave, by the way, a talk at the last IETF, because one of the big problems of the internet is again the not linear increase with time of the routing tables, the prefix tables, but it has become exponential again. And this group was very active, or is very active, in determining the cause. Why do we see again an exponential increase in routing table sizes on the core routers, and what can we do against it? Their notion, by the way, was that most of the new exponentialness of the growth of that table comes from multi-homing. There are lots of smaller organizations coming online, which are to be sure that they have a good connectivity, which is not dependent on a simple chain of links. So they multi-home, so that if one link doesn't work, then the other works. But that means that all the routers have at least 2 entries for a multi-homed network. So they look into what can be done to avert these problems. Then there is a secure multicast group, the SMUG group. So they look how you can do multicast in a kind of secure way, such that it satisfies a certain requirements set. As far as I could see, they have also a limited membership policy, but they are active. They are quite active. They actually gave in San Diego a talk on the plenary. So these are the last 2 groups that I can mention. The Services Management Research Group. They are chartered to investigate new architectures, information models, and supporting protocols to enable a convergence for management. They want to create an consistent management interface, so that you can abstract that more. They are quite active, and they have also a limited membership policy. By the way, the reason that many groups have a limited policy is just to keep the discussions in small groups, so that they can go forward quite quickly, instead of having to explain every time again to new members what happened in the past. The newest group here is the last one which I will mention, and that's the Internet Digital Rights Management Group. This one was just recently chartered a few months ago, and it really takes as a problem how do you do the management of streamed multimedia information which is going over the internet in a standard way, so that if a movie is streamed to your home, that they really can manage the rights of it, and so to avert illegal copying of actually any rich multimedia. This was quite a debate between the IRTF chair, who wanted this group approved, and the IAB, which thought that this was way too political. But in the end, the IRTF chair got his way, and this one was approved. To give you another example which was not approved, there was also a proposal to make a research group of a group of people who wanted to study the traffic across peering points, and to model that, and to try to learn from that. And that was not approved because of reasons of that the IAB thought that this is way too much into the organizational aspects of the peering point members and businesses, and they didn't want to get really into this kind of politics. So this concludes my overview of the research groups. My conclusions about IRTF being now in there for about 1.5 years, it can work very well. It takes a lot of energy from a chair to really keep the group running. You have to sometimes bring them again to life, because all the members are usually, of course, people who have also a full-time job doing whatever they get paid for, and nobody gets really paid for working in these kind of groups. So it is quite some energy which you have to put in. It is a low threshold to really start a research group. So if you have a good idea, go to that RFC, write a charter and submit it to the IRTF chair and talk to him. But as I said already, it is difficult to keep the speed in research groups, and well, in my group at least, it's still going very well. There are new research groups needed, in my view. It's not necessarily the IRTF chair's view. I didn't ask him if it was his view. I think that new research groups are needed to look into optical networking in the long term. You get now the lambda and multiple lambda business. So how does internet change if there is an abundance of lambdas going through the ISPs into organizations, and where is the actual internet routing be done? Are there IP rendezvous points for that, or how is the internet at large going to change? Because you see then at the core layer 1 protocol, and the layer 3 might become really to the edge or to the users even. So how is that in the long term going to go? It's in my view something which needs to be researched. The grid architecture, actually there were talks with grid people and IETF, IRTF about how to work together. I don't know what the current status is. Yesterday in the bar I heard things which are less amusing, but I hope that in the end the grid architect, the grid work will somehow also go through the IETF way of building standards. Maybe also a research group would be needed on the middleware architecture. I mean, there's a lot of middleware, but there's no architecture currently as far as I can detect it, although the grid people come a long way in defining an architecture for middleware. And maybe anything what needs an architecture, but I'm probably typically an architecture guy. So this concludes my talk.
Thank you. As I said, let's leave the questions to the end, so I introduce the next speaker, who is again Stefano Trumpy. He's a real collector of hats. As I said, one hat that he used to wear was that he was the president of TERENA until 2 years ago. In that function, he represented TERENA in the Internet Society, of which TERENA is a member. Also, Stefano's own employer, CNR, is a member of the Internet Society. So he's still representing CNR there, and in that function has taken on some extra work, like being Vice President for Policy of the ISOC Advisory Council. So Stefano is going to tell us now about the Internet Society, if we can find his slides.
Okay. Okay, thank you again. And inside the Internet Society, as Karel remembered, I'm representing the organizational members, formerly TERENA and now CNR in Italy. And I've been elected as Vice President for Policy in this Advisory Council. I will make a brief presentation concerning the present status of the ISOC. So this is sort of a commercial presentation, let's say, the 4 pillars on which the ISOC is basing his way of action, which are the standards, the public policy, education and training, and the membership. Concerning the standards, you already have seen from Cees the slide of all the ties between the standard organizations, and I'm not going to speak about that because we already learned enough, although we would have liked to listen some more about IETF, but okay, so I don't want to go further on IAB because Cees already explained what it is about, the architecture of the Internet. While I want to say something about this quite important aspect of the ISOC activity, which is concerning the what we call public policy. And let's say the various items. First one is censorship or freedom of expression. These are 2 aspects that sometimes appear to be, of course, are colliding potentially. And from one side, the Internet was born in a sort of an anarchic way where freedom of expression is a must. But of course, when in the Internet you have a number of bad habits or something which goes against the laws or the public acceptable behavior, then you need some sort of a control also on the content which are going into the network. And the other extreme is to make censorship. And we had a number of examples recently coming from China, for example, where there is a sort of control of the contents, and the ISOC is making public statements trying to discourage any country to filter or to control the content of the mails or the content of the web or things like that. The role of ISOC is not to enter directly into conflict with the governments which allow form of censorship, but at least to try to establish an acceptable global behavior for dealing and running the network. Another important point, which of a very different nature, is this of taxation. There is a wish of many governments to try to start making money from the Internet transactions, and until now, basically, there has not been taxation in the Internet, but there are many worries in the United States, but now also in Italy and in Europe concerning the e-commerce and all the commercial transactions which are happening into the internet. So this is also a point of discussion where a number of people involved in policy making inside the ISOC are dealing with. Then there is this area quite important, which is the internet governance, and the internet governance may be limited to the functions of IANA, the activity that I was describing just before. But if there is a much broader interpretation that you may give to internet governance, and for those of you which will have the chance to come over in Stockholm for the INET conference in 2 weeks from now, I want to mention this panel discussion, which is quite important and will be attended by a lot of governmental people. Quest for global self-regulation, lessons learned. And the panel brings together some of the leading figures in the internet community to examine issues related to self-regulation. And among the participants is Karel, the person who is in charge of the at-large study in ICANN that I was mentioning before. And so this is, I think, one of the important appointments that ISOC is organizing. Another point concerning public policy is intellectual property, the protection of intellectual property, and there are many points here, and people saying that it is the end of the life of the free services over the internet. You heard about the music and about a lot of copyright infringing that the governments, or not only the governments, but the commercial sector want to stop in order to render the economy of the internet more controlled, less anarchic, let's say. And another important recent activity is the constitution of this Internet Societal Task Force. So now we have IETF, IRTF, and now also ISTF. So this societal task force was activated about one couple of years ago by initiative of Vietsch, one of the fathers of the internet, and the idea is to promote inside the ISOC an activity which is relating to a number of aspects like the one mentioned here, the accessibility, so the possibility of lessening the digital divide and having an ubiquitous internet and allowing as much people as possible to access, problems concerning privacy and security, not from a technical point of view, but from a regulatory and societal point of view. And then the public software, so free software, and so these are the activated working group up to now. But the idea of ISTF is much more ambitious, and soon they will start organizing conferences similar to the IETF. I mean the module. And also there is a proposal of formation of a cyberspace research institute. For the moment is a proposal. Then they need to collect money and then to place this. So this is at the very early stage, so no geographical location yet. And there are some initiatives similar to that recently born in United States, but financed by large groups, Internet Research Institute or something like that, located in Washington area. Recently, ISOC was recognized as an NGO by UNESCO. Someone could say, what does it mean? And NGO stands for non-governmental organization. Actually, UNESCO is recognizing ISOC as an important organization in order to promote the information technology in developing countries, and especially in research and education area. So, although UNESCO being sort of a bureaucratic organization, this coupling of the two organizations may have some significant result for the developing countries. We hope so. In the field of education and training, ISOC organizes conference every year, similar to what we are doing, but addressing a much broader audience. At least they would like to have conferences of a different size, starting from 1,000 to 2,000 or 3,000 attendees. So another order of magnitude of our conferences, and every year they organize these conferences on security. And another important activity is the network training workshops, which were dedicated in the past to developing countries in particular. And just to give you a figure, up to now ISOC trained some 2,500 technicians coming from developing countries, and every year there is a workshop in parallel to the conference. Yeah, still going on. So the next one will be in Stockholm in a couple of weeks from now, and it's possible to enter into this play and to ask for having the expenses covered by ISOC. Every year they have some 250 participants. It depends from the money they get from the sponsors, of course. There is an activity for sustainable internet training centers, and finally, the Fiesta, Internet Fiesta, is an organization which started in France a few years ago, and is just to encourage the spread out of the knowledge of the internet among the public, let's say, in general. About the membership, and ISOC is organized with individual members, organizational members, and chapters. So individual members are now 8,000, about 8,000. Individual members pay $35 per year annually, while in developing countries they are only paying $5. And the individual members elect the 14 members of the Board of Trustees. So recently we had elections. The organizational members are companies or universities or branch of governments or any organization wanting to contribute to the ISOC budget, and altogether These 172 members cover most of the ordinary budget of ISOC, and they are represented in the advisory council, where they elect 7 officers which attend to the board of trustees with no voting rights. And then we have the chapters. There are now inside ISOC 65 active chapters and 77 information, which is quite surprising. First of all, let me say that a chapter is geographically based, and the idea is that the chapter, the purpose is serving the interest of a segment of the global internet community through a local presence, and focus on local issues and developments, and then transfer these local instances to the ISOC organization. Actually, recently we organized also a council of the chapters in order to transfer local needs, local inputs to the board of trustees. And there are chapters in countries. There are chapters in cities like New York, like Geneva, like Paris, and there are chapters in regions like Catalonia, Castilla, regions of France, Wallonie, in Belgium, and so on. 3, yeah. And in some countries there is one chapter which is that country. In Italy we have one chapter. Recently also I think Palestine is in process of forming a chapter. Israel has a chapter, and but is not binding the geographical settlement. The scope is this one. And apparently this organization by chapters is having a good success if there are more information than there's existing, which is a very mobile situation. Okay, that's end my presentation.
Thank you very much. We have a few minutes left if there are any questions to Stefano on his second talk or on his first talk, or any questions to Laat on his presentation. Any questions? Yes, over there.
Stefano, can you explain your first talk about ICANN and your last talk about ISOC? What's exactly the relation between those organizations in the hierarchy?
My relation with these organizations?
Not your personal, but the organization as such.
The relation between the Internet Society and
okay. ISOC was born in 98, as I said, and actually ISOC, ICANN was born in 98, and ISOC in 96 started a working group which was dealing about the expansion of the domain name system, about breaking up the network solution monopoly, about inserting new GTLDs, and actually this group IAHC proposed 7 new general population domains, which at the end actually were not the same as ICANN approved. So people in the countries, like in Italy for example, asked me, why do we need 2 different organizations for dealing with the internet? And can you explain to me, or
someone of the two will die, and which is a good perspective. So it's not an easy answer. Actually, for example, ICANN has not much problem for being financed because ICANN is providing services, and then they can get some money as a percentage of the money they get from the names or the numbers. While ISOC is more based on solidarity, let's say. So people pays the $35 to ISOC because they feel that they should contribute, but not for getting any service, as well as the organizational members. So that's why running from a financial point of view, ISOC is much more difficult than running ICANN. And the same is for TERENA, we know very well, because TERENA is not providing services that you can bill for it clearly. It's more based on solidarity principle. But coming back to the question, it is not easy to see how will be the future. I can see that ISOC stay there almost like it is, because ISOC is the house of the standard bodies, is the representing the internet culture, let's say, and the evolution, while ICANN is something more operational, which has a lot of political implications because of the interest of the national governments in running the network. So someone think that in the future the political side of ICANN could go to some international organization like ITU or something where to discuss all the problems of the governance of the internet, while ICANN becoming more technical and simply a function that you pay for it to get some sort of services. So this is a rough view of the perspective.
Thank you. This time. I was about to say there's time for one short question and one short answer, and then 4 people raised their hands. Claudio was actually signaling to me before, when you were still on your first answer, so I think he was first. Claudio Locchio.
Well, it's just something to complete what Stefano said, to give the general answer probably to anybody. ICANN is very limited in its scope. It's a service. It's in its name. Assign number and name. So it's a service to the community to assign numbers, the IP addresses, and to assign name, the management of topological domains. So ISOC is something which has to do with everything else. So just this to try to make it more clear.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to leave it at that because we are running. I have 2 practical announcements. One practical announcement is that for those of you who are not in the Tally Hotel, the bus will leave at 5:45, which is 5 minutes from now, which is a very good reason to stop. Urgent message.
I have an urgent question. I mean, is the IETF speaker going to turn up tonight?
No. Well,
I mean, you're afraid he may not turn up at all?
He will turn up, but at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, well, my suggestion is that you schedule him at lunchtime tomorrow.
Okay.
I would be very interested to hear him.
Okay, we'll try to read. Thank you. Thanks to both speakers for their talks. As I said, 2 practical announcements for those of you. First announcement, for those of you who are not in the Tally Hotel, the buses to the various other hotels leave 4 minutes from now. The second announcement, from all the hotels, there will be buses to the opening reception. The bus will leave from your hotel at 6:30, 6:30. The opening reception is an outdoor reception if you're the wise sort of person who took an umbrella to Antalya, it may be wise to take your umbrella to the opening reception. If it is really